Social tolerance. Comprehensive notes.
What is tolerance? Tolerance is generally understood as a necessary component of a functioning democracy and stable world order. Indeed, the Preamble of the United Nations Charter, UN 1945, declares the intention of its member states to practice tolerance and live together in peace with one another as good neighbors. Later, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO 1995, clarified the meaning of tolerance. According to Article 1.1, tolerance is respect, acceptance and appreciation of the rich diversity of our world's cultures, our forms of expression and ways of being human. Tolerance is harmony in difference. Tolerance is often invoked as something to which individuals and societies should aspire, especially given diversity, in all its forms, is increasingly a feature of contemporary democracies. When tensions arise, some leaders call for a greater tolerance of particular groups or encourage general efforts to become a more tolerant society. For example, in 2004, then Secretary General of the UN, Kofi Annan said, "Tolerance, intercultural dialogue and respect for diversity are more essential than ever in a world where peoples are becoming more and more closely interconnected." United Nations 2004. According to UNESCO Director General Lord Riazoulay, tolerance is an act of humanity, which we must nurture and enact each in our own lives every day, to rejoice in the diversity that makes us strong and the values that bring us together. UNESCO 1996. What does this mean in practice? That those who hold prejudicial attitudes should fight against their dislike of particular outgroups? That everyone should respect others' values or attitudes even when they are contrary to their own? That society should always value or embrace diversity? Leaders rarely give answers to these questions. Unfortunately, science does not provide much guidance either. Ferrar, 1976-63, proclaimed, "The concept of tolerance is in a state of disarray." According to Ferrar, tolerance has multiple dimensions, but the empirically oriented literature primarily emphasizes one: negative attitudes towards outgroups. She argues that when scholars rely on indicators of prejudice towards social groups or discrimination in their analyses of tolerance, they imply that tolerance and its opposite are sufficiently described by reference to categoric prejudgments of minority groups and their members. We take this argument one step further and contend that incorporating prejudice into the meaning or measurement of tolerance makes the concept of tolerance analytically indistinguishable from prejudice, confusing what tolerance is and how it differs from dislike, disapproval, or disgust with specific outgroups. Despite a great deal of empirical research on tolerance over the past 40 years, some of which includes overt efforts to clarify the concept, this disarray persists. We claim that the central problem continues to be the conflation, explicit or implicit, of prejudice and intolerance, either in conceptualization or operationalization. Despite problems in the scientific literature, it is generally accepted that tolerance is something necessary for democracies. As Kuklinski et al. 1991-3 note, few aspects of political life so directly and immediately touch upon the daily lives of common citizens as does their tolerance toward each other. Footnote 1. To answer some of the pressing, if not existential questions facing multi-ethnic, democratic societies today, we need a clearer understanding of tolerance, what it is and what it isn't. And, before we can begin to assess its impact on various aspects of social, economic, and political life, we need better tools to measure it. In the sections that follow, we begin with a review of previous empirical research on tolerance. Then, based on scholarship on toleration, we advance a conceptualization of tolerance that is abstract as well as analytically separate from other concepts. Specifically, we define tolerance as a value orientation towards difference. Next, we develop new measures to operationalize three aspects of tolerance. Importantly, these measures do not include references to specific social or political outgroups or particular types of attitudes or behaviors. Instead, the items capture acceptance of, respect for, and appreciation of difference in the abstract. We administer a survey twice, first using a random sample of the Swedish population and second using an online format in Australia, Denmark, Sweden, United Kingdom, and the United States. After validating our measures empirically, we demonstrate their relationship to prejudice and other variables. We conclude with a discussion of our results, their contributions, limitations, as well as practical implications.